Look who stopped by, fresh back from 49ers camp. Great moment on live NFL Network television and streaming yesterday when Mike Garafolo was calling out the agent of Brandon Aiyuk, who was just milling around in the background of the facility. Good to see you, Mike. How are you?
I'm great, Rich. Thank you. It was Raiders camp.
Raiders camp. Okay.
But you're thinking 49ers because of Aiyuk. I get that.
Sure, you're right.
But it opened up a whole bunch of speculation, baseless speculation. People were like, "Oh, he's there to get something done with the." No, he's got a lot of clients around the league. Seeing a few of them there.
Yeah, I mean, it's as if Aiyuk is his only client. So, all right. So now that we've gotten that all straight, what is the latest on Brandon Aiyuk in your estimation, Mike?
In my estimation, and this is all educated, I would say more educated than guessing, but I would call it an educated guess because you got to piece this thing together.
Sure.
The 49ers, because we said they're never going to trade Brandon Aiyuk because they're trying to win the Super Bowl. Well, at some point, this thing turned to the point where they were open to it because they had shut it down going back to the spring and just recently had really engaged with teams and given Aiyuk and his agent permission to speak to teams because they got to get the contract part of it done. So they, I don't know exactly when, but within the last week or so, opened the gates to that. But just like we said, they're trying to win the Super Bowl. They're trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we make sure we get a wide receiver back, which is why the reports came out, the framework of a deal with the Patriots and the Browns. They have receivers that coming back would make sense to the 49ers. The Steelers don't have that. They're not going to trade George Pickens, obviously. And that's why they need Aiyuk and why they have interest in Aiyuk. So part of this, and they just signed Robbie Chosen Anderson. I think he's got all three names now, if I'm not mistaken. So is that enough in their mind to say, okay, well, now let's work out the best deal we possibly can with the Steelers? Or is that just part of the process and they're still going to go? Like, this is all, okay, we got to figure out this trade, but we also have to figure out we're creating a hole. So how do we best plug that hole as well? So there's a lot of things going on at once. And that's why I believe it's kind of been stuck in the mud a little bit the last couple of days.
Well, the Chosen Anderson signing to me sounds like they need to get somebody in camp. You know, and I'm sure Anderson's going to take an opportunity to get off the couch and play in a preseason game and maybe put some tape out there for himself. I can't imagine they're going to take somebody off at the crib and say that's Aiyuk's replacement. Clearly, they did also get, Pearsall in the draft. And so I totally understand that they'd want a wide receiver back. But what happened? Have you determined what you're reporting on why the Niners suddenly said, okay, we'll take a look at trading him at the top of training camp when you're so close to a season? Like what happened? Do you know?
I would say the hold in worked, and because he was there and he was participating in meetings and he was around the facility, and from my understanding, he wasn't an issue inside the building. He just wasn't practicing. Now there have been some meetings and some conversations. Go back to that meeting that they had. It was in July. It was before training camp, and Aiyuk was the one that initiated it. And it was with the intention of trying to get things reset. And from my understanding in that meeting, a lot of folks on both sides said some things they need to get off their chest. And they came away and it was like, okay, now we can potentially reset and negotiate a deal leading up to training camp so we don't have a holdout or a hold in or an issue or anything like that. Just get this deal done. And then it never really happened. They never got a formal offer from the 49ers. We have said repeatedly that the formal negotiations and the formal offers, and this is something where over the course of reporting on the NFL, I've kind of learned what constitutes an offer. Like you can say in a conversation, okay, we'd be willing to do this, or an agent or a player doesn't really consider an offer to be an offer until it's sent in an email. And okay, we've got a chance, and we've got a paper trail, basically. So they haven't done that for months. They haven't done that since back in the spring. So the hold-in happens, and it was strategic. And you can see Kyle Shanahan, day by day, being asked about it, getting more and more impatient because he wants to go out and coach the best football team he possibly can. So I could tell that this is something that has been grinding on him and grinding on the team. And they got to the point where it's like, all right, it's not going to happen here. It doesn't seem that way. So let's see if we can just get him out of here and make him happy and we move on.
Do we know the number? What's the number that Aiyuk is looking for? What's that number?
So Mike Reese from ESPN reported this yesterday, and I've been told the same thing. $32 million a year is what the Patriots were willing to do. Now, let's put that number in context. Justin Jefferson's up at 35. CeeDee Lamb's going to be up around there. Jamar Chase, whether he does it this year or next year, he's going to be up around there. That's the upper echelon of wide receivers. There's a big spread between 35 and 28, which is where Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. I mean, it was very well defined at $28 million a year for these guys, which in some cases they're number twos versus the guys that I just talked about that are number ones. Aiyuk in his mind feels like he's a number one. When I get evaluations around the league, they say, well, he's a 1B, like he's on the bottom of that one tier. We'd consider him a one. And they have so many guys, the Niners do in their offense, that it's hard to really make an apples to apples comparison. So in his mind, he's saying, well, I at least got to be at the 28 number that these other guys were at. And the Niners weren't there. The Patriots were willing to split those two tiers. That was I'm telling you right now, no matter where he signs, no matter where he gets traded, no matter where the next deal comes from, whether it's the Niners or anybody else, I'll still leave them involved. It's not going to be that number. So he's already, I can tell you, he has already turned down more money to go wherever else he's going to be. So frankly, it's not just about the money for him. And, I know he wanted to play in Washington. I don't know exactly what the draw is for him in Pittsburgh. I think he's just got a feeling about that team and a feeling about that situation that he wants to gravitate toward too. So it's going to be at a much lower number than 32. I usually, like, the guy signs and then we'll report, hey, he turned down more money elsewhere and nobody believes us.
Right.
It's good that we have this ahead. Like, we put the cart before the horse on this one.
Right. It makes sense that the Patriots would want him, right? They tried for Calvin Ridley. They didn't get him. He went to Tennessee. But it makes sense that the Patriots would take their shot. And it also makes sense that Aiyuk is like, listen, money's great, but why do I want to go to a spot where I don't know when the kid's going to start to play and I got to break him in and we don't know how good he's going to be, and this team was third overall on the clock for a reason last year. I know the Patriots aren't used to being in that position, but that is the reality of it. So that makes sense. The question of the timing of it now, though, Mike Garafolo, is it possible that the slowdown, if there is one, is occurring because the Steelers might have hit the mark with Aiyuk, right, monetarily, but they don't have the receiver the Niners want back, and this could be like an NBA type trade where they're looking for a third team willing to flip the receiver the Niners want to San Francisco, and that creates the issue of what the compensation would be in a three-way trade. Is that possible that that's happening right now, Mike?
I have no doubt in my mind that the 49ers have had those conversations. I've been told that. And they're nosing around the league. And the problem is nobody's really got an excess of receivers that can give you that caliber of guy you're looking for.
And that they're willing to trade him right now, right, at the outset of the season. Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is why, I mean, if you're the 49ers and you look back on this, you may say to yourselves, we probably should have done this around the draft, right? And at the time, they thought it was salvageable, and they had the Deebo Samuel trade requests in the past that they were willing, they were able to work their way through. So they felt the same way about Aiyuk, and they thought they were going to be able to do that. Hindsight certainly is 2020, and I'm sure now looking back, they're probably saying, well, if we had done this around the draft, because a lot of times now you're trading, not a lot of times, if you're trading draft picks now, you don't know where that draft pick's going to be. You do it before the draft, you know exactly where it's going to be, which sometimes it can work out to your benefit, right? The Chicago Bears wound up with the number one overall pick last year because they had made a deal with the Panthers and it wound up being number one. So sometimes it does work out to your advantage, but there's an unknown in that regard. And a lot of times when general managers are doing these deals and talking to owners who want answers, to have the known is, the better route to take in this one. So maybe looking back, they'll say, well, but at this point, there's nothing they can do about it. They've got to figure out the best path forward at this point. And they try, while these trade talks were happening, at some point along the way, they did have some kind of conversation with him, from my understanding, to say, can we still make this work here? And for whatever reason, Brandon Aiyuk does not feel that is the case now. So they've still kept that door open through this while allowing him to talk to other teams. So perhaps that's part of it too, the little slowdown to say, can we try one more time to see if we can reconcile this here? But I just think that so much damage has been done. I'm not seeing that path right now.
Yeah, because I mean, I was talking about it yesterday, Mike, on this show, that if there's any franchise where you could envision something that appears to be unsalvageable and totally broken actually being put back together, it's the franchise that once upon a time took Jimmy G's playbook away in the beginning of August and had him re-signed by the end of August, and he was starting by the middle of September. And so like that's why I'm still not ready to close the door. But you're and one way the door could be closed is if the Niners aren't hitting the number. Do we know what the number the Niners have put out there? Do we know the number the Niners have put out there?
Mike Silver reported that they offered $26 million a year. I believe that that's accurate. I believe that they were around. Now, again, offer versus non-offer. Right. There have been conversations since then where I believe they expressed a willingness to go higher, but that offer was never made. And so on Aiyuk's end, he's saying, well, if it's not sent to me, then it's not officially an offer. That's my understanding, at least. So now it becomes the part about how it's, and he's proving it by not taking the New England deal, that it's about more than money. And it's about, it's the R word. It's about respect, Rich. I mean, that's always going to be a part. I don't mean that, I understand where the player's coming from, but it's just, you hear that a lot about the respect. I'm most curious if he winds up in Pittsburgh. I want to know what the draw is to Pittsburgh. I mean, I've got a lot of answered questions as we've gone along. That's the one that I don't have because, you talked about, well, he doesn't want to go to New England. It's an uncertain quarterback situation. Pittsburgh's not certain. I mean, the only thing certain in Pittsburgh seems to be that you're going to at least be on the good side of 500 with Mike Tomlin. He has that proven track record. So maybe it's Tomlin. I don't know. I kind of want him to go there because I want that question answered. Because if he doesn't go there, then maybe he won't give us the real answer on that one.
Where's Cleveland in this? Where's that?
They've tried. That's another question I would have for him. Why would you want to go to Pittsburgh and not Cleveland? Right? Like it's not like Cleveland or Miami from geographically, right? They're both in that same neck of the country.
Did they not hit the number? Maybe they didn't hit the number. Maybe they didn't split the tiers, to use your phrase, like New England did. I don't know.
They did not. They were not. Doesn't sound like they're willing to go there. But I don't think that the way Pittsburgh structures their contracts as well. They don't guarantee. A lot of times for players, they'll guarantee the first year and nothing beyond that. So this may wind up being a smaller guarantee as well. Because I had that question. Well, maybe New England had a big average per year, but they didn't get. I said, you watch how Pittsburgh structures this deal. There's going to be less than the guarantee as well if, again, he winds up there. So I don't think it's going to be like, monetarily, Pittsburgh was willing to go where Cleveland was not willing. I do not think that's going to be the case at all.
And is the reason the Niners haven't split the tiers, again, by that phrase, Mike Garafolo here, one of the NFL insiders from NFL Network and the Rich Eisen Show, you use the phrase split the tiers, meaning tier 1, Justin Jefferson, what we expect CeeDee Lamb to be at 35 and change. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown at the top at 28 of whatever tier he's got. I think he's top tier. But long story short, though, splitting the tiers, the Niners didn't do it. Is that because they know Purdy's around the corner? Or is that what it is? Or they just don't believe Aiyuk is worth 30-something million bucks a year?
Probably some kind of combination of both, but also, McCaffrey, George Kittle.
Got Trent Williams. Trent Williams wants his too.
Yeah, Trent Williams. I mean, there's a lot of guys to pay. Now, Ayuk's response to that is, that's not my problem, right? And the other part of the conversation is, well, your numbers. I mean, look at his numbers compared to let's take Amon-Ra. Look at his numbers compared to Amon-Ra. They don't stack up, but they don't stack up because he doesn't get the ball as much as Amon-Ra does because there's so many other mouths to feed in that offense. Which again, Ayuk's answer to that, I'm sure, is that's not my problem. I'm just going off my worth and what I know that I'm able to do. And if I was in a different team and I was the number one option and there weren't 4 other guys of the top caliber to get the ball to, then I would have those numbers, right? So I think that's what really made the negotiations with San Francisco difficult and how we got to this point.
All right, so 2 more questions for you. Mike Garafolo here from NFL Network, NFL Media Insider, one of the insiders available on NFL Network, NFL Plus. So CeeDee Lamb not signed because they're waiting to see how the pieces land here, or the Joneses and CeeDee are at an impasse in their own right?
No, I think it was a process, and the Cowboys wanted a certain length of the contract, whether it was 5 years. I think they like to do 5-year deals. Same thing with Dak. Like, they want to do a 5-year deal. It got him down to 4. That was and is part of the conversation. I just can't imagine that this takes much longer. I can't. I know, and my understanding is there's been progress. So I believe CeeDee Lamb. Jane Slater and I were talking, my colleague at NFL Network yesterday, about the timing of.
She's our colleague, Mike. Our colleague. Yes.
Our colleague. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
One big happy family, Rich.
Yes, we are.
And she was talking about the timing of another deal that happened recently, and Jane knows much more about the Cowboys than I do, and remembers much more about the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like right when they broke camp. So they had this like, okay, we're coming back home and we're bringing our guy. I can't remember who the heck it was, but she was saying, wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Now, they're in Oxnard, I believe, a little later than they usually are. So that's still going to be a week plus, whatever it winds up being. But I can't imagine this gets close to week 1 without a deal.
Okay, so you feel that way about CeeDee. Same thing with Jamar Chase. You mentioned how he could do it next year. What about him?
Yeah, yeah. And then if that's the case, because he's at year 3, Jefferson was at year 4. So Justin Jefferson had to wait for his 4th year to really get the deal that he wanted to get done in Minnesota. He may have to do that, he being Jamar Chase. But then at that point, why does the hold-in continue, right? Or at some point you go, okay, well, this is not going to happen this year. I'm not going to hold out through the entire season. I mean, I obviously want to play and put the production up and help the numbers. And then maybe next year you're jumping Justin Jefferson. If you have the year that you're capable of having and you stay healthy, then you could be the new high water mark at $36, $37 million. If you get another salary cap jump like we wound up, nobody's expecting that, but that can change the game as well. So that may wind up being the case. And then if that is, and I know that there's frustration in Cincinnati. I know they were trying to get this done. They feel like they should have been able to get this done. They have not to this point. It doesn't sound like I'm hearing much more positive vibes with CeeDee than I am with Jamar at this point. So at what point does he go, okay, this is just not going to happen, so I got to get back on the field? We'll see.
All right, before I let you go, Mike Garafolo, sports talk radio question, which means I'm giving you multiple choice.
Yeah.
You must choose in your best guess on what happens here. Here are your choices. Brandon Aiyuk goes to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Aiyuk goes to Cleveland. Brandon Aiyuk goes somewhere else. Brandon Aiyuk signs and stays with the Niners. Or Brandon Aiyuk doesn't get traded and winds up holding out week 1 and for who knows how long. Those are your 5 choices. Mike Garafolo. You started this conversation with an educated guess. I'd like your educated guess on the final question here. What do you have?
Let me just make sure. You always got to check the text to see if nothing happened. Nothing.
Okay.
I will still continue to say Brandon Aiyuk winds up as a Pittsburgh Steeler. I believe that is going to wind up being the case. We do not have an agreement at this point.
Correct.
On either side. Obviously, they have the general understanding of at least where the contract is going to be, and then bing, bang, boom, you can finish that one off quickly. I believe in the end, he winds up with the Pittsburgh Steelers in relatively short order here.
Oh, in relatively short order.
Well, I'm
okay.
My line the last couple of days has been like, I feel like we're getting close. I feel like we're getting close. And I feel like there's only a certain time frame that you can basically consider close,
sure. Right?
And I know that there's a lot of Twitter X reporting right now going on where guys have stamped along the way, and they'll all claim credit and say, "See, I told you it was done."
Right.
I don't know. I feel like there's a statute of limitations on how long you can claim something is going to get done, but I'm tired of saying we're getting closer, because at some point it should have been done the last couple of days. If I keep saying
no, I hear you. No, I totally say. Okay, so you choose Aiyuk to Pittsburgh. Steeler fans would lose their minds if that happens. They'd be very happy about that. Certainly, if they keep Pickens at the same time.
It would be a great addition at this time. And again, I in the end, if that winds up happening, especially what we know with what New England offered to get him at the number that I believe you'll wind up getting him at, should only make you even more happy.
And Justin Fields is the week 1 starting quarterback there? How about that?
Which pre-training camp may have seemed crazy. When I was there in Latrobe early on for Back Together weekend, they made a point of, when I had conversations with folks behind the scenes, making a point of saying, everybody's assuming that Russ was the guy. Like, Mike Tomlin only said he was in the pole position. This is a competition here. And Russ hasn't been on the field. I continue to say Justin Fields is going to do something in the preseason that's absolutely spectacular, because he does it, and Mike Tomlin likes to play his guys. Certainly wants to see his quarterbacks. He's going to do something, whether it's with his arm or legs. He's going to do something. You're going to go, wow. Russ is not a wow guy anymore. Plus, he's got the calf injury. He hasn't been on the field, and my understanding is Fields has been extremely willing, and this is something I heard back to Chicago, extremely willing to take coaching, and so Arthur Smith and his coaching staff feel like there's been progress there. So yeah, I'm covering that game tomorrow on NFL Network, the Steelers and the Texans. If I can get there with all the rain coming up the Eastern Seaboard, right, I'll probably wind up driving when all is said and done, just to make sure I get there.
Well, okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you there, and I appreciate the time here, Mike. Thank you very much.
You got it, Rich. Thank you very much.
That's my colleague, Mike Garafolo, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.